Welcome to the Unfair Fight, our Elite Performance Series. Much appreciated. I haven't been to Montreal since I was like 5 years old, but I love it up here. It's absolutely fantastic. You're blessed to have grown up here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to do this with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, this podcast, like we talked, is really about featuring folks like you that have really pushed the boundary in elite performance, whatever the discipline. Obviously, you know, yours was in MMA and now the business and acting world. And I just think it's really good for our audience, which is primarily, you know, kind of entrepreneurs, CEOs, to learn from other disciplines. I just think it's incredibly important. And so, yeah, I'd love to kind of go through today what makes you tick and get to know you a little bit and let the audience get to learn a little bit more about George St-Pierre. So, all right, first off, I guess speed round. So I'm going to hit you with a whole bunch of questions just so everyone can learn a little bit more about you. Favorite color?
Gold.
Gold. Heck yeah, I like that. Favorite car? That's a tricky one, isn't it?
The Cullinan.
Ah, very cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I drove one with Jay Leno.
Did you really?
I did, yeah.
That's ridiculous. Yeah. Wonderful. BJJ, I don't know, fighter, practitioner, kind of special discipline.
My master is John Donaire. I think he's the best one. I mean, in terms of knowledge.
Encyclopedia of knowledge, isn't he? Yeah, I've heard him a lot. He's fantastic. Muay Thai. I think I know this answer.
There's a few. I like Phil Nurse, Jean-Charles Karabowski. They were some of my mentors.
Jean-Charles was absolute savage. When you brought him onto the Ultimate Fighter, that was hilarious. It didn't even look like he was trying, and people were dropping to the canvas.
Oh, he's truly the epitome of what efficiency is.
Yeah, effortless power.
Yeah, exactly. He's not the most athletic human being, but he's just incredible.
I guess that's probably one key thing with elite performance is getting such a master of skills where you do develop this efficiency. I mean,
very often the people make the mistake. They say, "Oh, you need to work hard," but I don't think it's the most important thing. Right. Work smart. It's way more important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the previous gentleman I had on here, Dave Sears, who's a SEAL Team 6 operator and officer, he's got a book out called Smarter Not Harder. I think they subscribe to a lot of the same stuff. All right, we'll rip through these. Favorite wrestler? Like American wrestling.
American. Okay, yeah. I like St-Pierre, but if you ask me the American, I like Jordan Burroughs.
All right. Well, actually, I shouldn't have caveated as American wrestling.
No, but
the Russians and the Iranians are pretty good too.
Burroughs. Yeah. I like Jordan Burroughs.
Awesome. All right. Favorite band? Music.
I like the rapper Drake. He's not a band. He's a singer. But
yeah, he's good. Favorite movie?
Of all time?
Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? I couldn't think of my
Jurassic Park, Bloodsport.
Oh, Bloodsport was a classic.
But I watched it recently, and unfortunately, it doesn't get. It's not like wine; it doesn't get better with age.
Bloodsport.
Yeah, it's bad.
Remember the scene when I think Jean-Claude Van Damme had some stuff thrown in his eyes, and now he had to.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. All right, a few more, and then we'll get into this. Your idol, someone you look up to.
There is a lot. My first one is my dad. Oh. He taught me the value of hard work.
Did he really?
Yeah. The most important one was my dad, my best model, and Royce Gracie.
Oh, yeah.
The one who won the first Ultimate Fighting Championship.
I'll never forget that. Tournament style, multiple fights at night. It was a whole nother ball game back then. Here's a tough one. Biggest regret?
Oh. There's a lot of stuff I regret, but the regret is not for the things that I have done that I regret. I've done a lot of stupid things. It's the thing that I did not do that I regret.
Right.
And for example, when I took time off of more than 4 years at one point in my career, and the reason why I did it is because I was going through a depression, and I was fighting also against performance enhancing drug. And there was a point in my career that I was in a press conference with the guy that at the time agreed to participate to a drug testing.
Sure.
And at the moment of the press conference, he refused. He changed his mind. And
At the press conference.
And I had a flash in my mind that told me, I said, you know what? You should walk away and leave your belt on the table. And I did not do it.
Just to press him, yeah.
Yeah, and I did not
had
do
to
it.
be
And
hindrance.
it haunted me until this day that I should have done it at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big challenge in a lot of sports. I mean, obviously your sport, it was obvious, especially when you look at the late 90s, what a lot of the guys looked at.
Well, I don't have the evidence. I don't know. I mean, it's not for one person that I did it. It's because I was just tired. It was too much obvious in our sport. And it's, you can say I play baseball, I play hockey, play basketball.
Sure.
You don't play fighting. The outcome of a loss in our sport, it's way more serious than losing a game of basketball. Yeah, you can actually die.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's no question.
Or maybe you're not gonna die on the spot, but you might have some consequence, some damage that will make you die in a few years.
Yeah, some really long-term consequences. You know, it's kind of funny when you watch the fights, you love the ones where they're just standing, going toe-to-toe, but then I feel so bad because I'm like, that has got to add up over time. Like, that's like a tax you're going to have to pay later in life.
I think, too, it has a lot to do with how you train, because you fight maybe, depending, every fighter is different, but you fight normally when you're in the elite of the elite, you fight 2 or 3 times a year.
Right.
But you train every day.
Right.
A lot of guys train the same way they fight. You know, if you're more a technical guy, you'll try to play like hide and seek sort of game, you know, to touch but not getting touched. But there's guys that really like to brawl, you know what I mean? And that's the way they fight. That's how they fight at their best. But this come to a point that you have to pay the price at one point, you know?
Yeah, there's no question. I remember at one point, I forget who it was, but they were criticizing you for, frankly being too smart in the cage.
Well, they were accusing me of not taking enough risk because I was very calculated in the risk that I was taking. And if I always have the mentality that if I'm winning the fight, why should I take a risk to put myself in jeopardy while I'm winning the fight? It's up to my opponent to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you want to change the momentum of the fight, because that's what he needs to do to win. I can't. It's not up to me because if I'm winning, why would I do that? You know? I think it's an unnecessary risk. You know.
And I think the other part, people have to try and put yourself in the shoes of a professional fighter. You have to make a living off this, right? Why would you do so? I mean, you wouldn't do that in business, right?
If you look at the culture in the East, they understand that. In the West, we do not understand that. In a Muay Thai fight, they fight almost every week. So if you see two guys, if you see 2 guys fighting each other, the first round they size each other, they play, and that's when most of the thing happen. You know, they play and they see who's the best. You know what I mean? And very often, one guy will accept the dominance of the other guy because he knows that he's better than him. You know, he's gonna try to win. You know what I mean? There's money on the table, but he will accept. And if he accept, he's gonna play just to make the fight, but he knows that he's not. You know what I mean? You know, and the guy that wins, that is winning the fight, he's continuing to play. You know what I mean? So he's not going to take unnecessary risk, and the crowd is not like, ooh, that's, you know what I mean? They understand what's going on, you know what I mean? So because they make this for a living, they fight every week, you know?
You know what's wild about that is when you think about when animals fight, they rarely fight to the death, actually, unless it's like a predator-prey and they have to eat. But when it's two bears fighting, at some point, they tend to back off for the same reason, right? You gotta, live to fight another day, and it makes total sense.
A lion, when it faces a badger, it can kill a badger. You know what I mean?
Right.
But why would he take the risk?
He doesn't
just
want to
leave.
take the damage.
A badger will not back down on nothing. You know,
it's like a Wolverine.
Exactly.
They're like a type of
badger. The lion will back down on a badger, not because he's weaker.
Sure.
Because he knows that if he engages a fight, he might get injured. It's like, why taking a stupid risk? It's smarter, you know?
Absolutely. I got 2 more questions in the speed round. Favorite moment in your MMA career?
I think it's when I won the title against Matt Serra in Montreal, because it was the first time I was fighting in front of my family, my friend in the UFC for a world title.
Was that the first big fight? Was that when you had like 56,000 people?
That was in Toronto.
That was Toronto.
Yeah, that was Toronto. Montreal was the first time they came in, UFC came to Canada.
Right.
And it was very special for me because I was coming back from a loss. It was my chance to avenge the loss that I had against Matt Serra.
I remember that one. Yeah. I also remember, I think in the second one, did you end it with knees?
Yes.
They looked brutal.
Yeah.
Absolutely brutal. I still remember that one.
Yeah.
I watched that one close. All right, last question. Current life goal. Do you have any big? What are you?
My life is to become a better person, you know, like when I grew up, looking at myself in the mirror, I didn't like what I was looking at. Right. And I was someone who lacked a lot of confidence, who had a lot of self-esteem issue, and I wanted to become somebody else, but I didn't like what I saw in the mirror, but I fell in love with who I could become. And I'm still not that person that I want to become. You know, I'm better than what I was, but I'm still working my way to get there.
It's always steps, isn't it? Yeah, in this life. So now you touched on it. Tell us a little bit about your path to MMA. And I'm also really curious, especially, you know, for kind of the entrepreneurs out there. You know, 9 out of 10 startups tend to fail, right? It's really tough mentally, costs a lot of money. Sometimes it puts kind of like a lot of fighters in financial ruin if you don't make it, and most don't, right? And so tell us a little bit about kind of, you know, your path to getting to MMA, and two, when that bit flipped, where you realized that this is now going to be my profession, my life, and, you know, talk to me a little bit about that.
I started mixed martial art because I started as a self-defense. Okay. I started because I was getting bullied at school, and I was a fan of martial art movies, right. You know, the movies with Jean-Claude Van Damme, Chuck Norris, Steven Seagal. And it really inspired me to start martial art. And my dad was a black belt in karate, so he
was?
Yeah, he first taught me.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he first taught me in the beginning, but he didn't have enough time, you know, because he was working very hard all the time, and we didn't have a lot of money when I grew up. So they put me in a school. Growing up in Canada, most of kids that want to play sport, they play hockey, but hockey costs a lot of money because you need to buy all the equipment. We didn't have the money to spend for that, so I choose karate, and things were not going very well at school, and things were not very well at home either. And the only place where I felt it was good, it was in the dojo, you know. Right. So I think that's why I developed a certain interest for martial art. You know, very quickly, I became very good, and I started collectioning medals. You know, I was competing and I was doing very well.
So you had good success early on.
Yes, it was very rewarding for me because nowhere else in my life it was doing well. It was going well. Only when I was at school, I remember I was not focusing on what the teacher was explaining. I was focusing on how I'm gonna, when I hear the ring, how I'm gonna reach my locker, pick up my book, run to the bus before getting beat up by the guys that were waiting for me. So I was constantly under stress, and at home it was tough too. We had a bad time. My dad and for that now I really admire him because I know he did a lot of effort. He had a drinking problem, and but he stopped a long time ago, and I know I saw him how hard it was, you know, and for me it became a big inspiration for me. So when I say that he's one of my role model, right. It's not for what necessarily the material thing he did. It's for what he had to go through to stop drinking, and I saw like how hard it was.
Especially something like that with the physical dependency as well.
It's very hard, and we didn't have a lot of money. He was under a lot of stress. He needed to provide for the family. Right. Sometimes I feel a little bit bad because I didn't realize that like all the sacrifice he made when I was young, you know, and I was like complaining sometimes, and I felt bad because he did a lot of sacrifice. So for me, it's the best role model I had. And things were not going well at home at one point. We're not well at school. The only place where I was doing well, it was in the karate dojo. I was collecting medals. So I start martial art as a self-defense. Okay. Self-defense became a passion. And later on, the passion transformed into a business.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of, I tell folks all the time, I think the one trait all humans need is something to look forward to. And it sounded like if things are tough at home, things are tough at school, that one thing you always had to look forward to, which keeps you going. I mean, when people have nothing to look forward to, that's a sad life.
When I was young, I never thought that would turn into a positive. Right. You know, I was miserable, you know, at the time, and I was complaining a lot. And now I realize that sometimes when you're under a certain stress, it can make you stronger. You know, it can make you collapse too. You know what I mean?
Bad stress and good stress.
Yeah,
right?
but if you don't give up, that's what it is to be a warrior. You know, if you don't give up, you keep pushing through it. You know, and at one point you'll see the light at the end of it, and that's when you realize, like, man, thank you for this. And I believe that the fact that I've been bullied at school at an early age helped me throughout my career in mixed martial art, because a lot of the time I was about to fight someone, they were playing mind games on me. They were trying to intimidate me, and they were trying to insult me, but I was used to it because when I was young, I had to go through it. Right. So for me, it was a joke, you know, like I was fighting a guy that I knew in my mind that I was good enough to beat. Right. And when I was young, I was facing threat that sometimes there were 3 to 5 guys waiting for me, older than me, that I knew I had no chance to beat. So for me, that was way more stressful back then than it was during a fight. You know what I mean? If you put that in perspective, and of course, being a kid is different than being an adult, but the stress that I had when I was a kid, my ignorance made it just as stressful that it was before a fight. You know what I mean? Right. So it prepared me in a way. That stress that I had when I was young prepared me for what I had to face off later on in my career.
Yeah, it's incredible. You know, you touched on something already, which is really kind of the mental aspect for, you know, elite performance. I mean, you know, when you decided to, like, this is going to be my life, this is going to be a career, like, was there a specific mindset you had? Was it, you know, because I think you were one of the first guys to really bring the mixed into MMA, right? And professionalize it at a, you know, really the best ever, if you ask me. Was there a specific mindset? Was it part, I have to become a master in my craft? Was it part just, I'm never going to give up? You know, because you touched on it earlier, but I do think there is a concept of smarter, not harder, you know, and I'd just love to hear it, because I think in the business world, this is a really, really key sort of thing that every entrepreneur, because you go through these ups and the lows, and you're looking at maybe, crap, my financial picture might be really bad, you know, at some point.
There's a moment in my life I remember. I was a teenager. I was going to school, and I didn't know what to do for a living. I didn't know what I wanted to become. You know, at one point I wanted to become a police officer. At one point a fireman. I didn't know what I wanted to become, and I think it's normal. I think a lot of young kids, young teenagers are in the same mental state, because you're not the same person at 20 that you were when you were 15, and you won't be the same at 25 and 30 and 35 and 40. Like, you know what? Yes, at one point, maybe around, I guess, maybe late 20s, you will be more stable, right? But you change all the time. So what you want to become at maybe 15, it's not necessarily really what you will want to become at 20 or 25. So it's a normal thing. So, but I didn't know that at the time, and I was very sad to not knowing what I wanted to do, because when I was looking around, all my friends had a clear idea of what they want to become. You know, they were at school and they had a plan made or for what where they want to go in life, and I didn't have that. And until the day that I went to a friend's house, and I was a teenager, and he rented a VCR, and I watched the first UFC, and I was already a black belt in Kyokushin Karate, but my instructor at the time just passed from cancer, and I was sad. And I stopped training for, it was like maybe 2 months. And I was planning to start again, but I didn't know where to go. And I watched the first UFC, and I saw Royce Gracie winning the title. And at that time, I knew exactly that's what I want to do. Like I told all my friends at the time who were with me watching the show, that's what I want to do. And they all start laughing at me.
Of course, of course.
But then it became my journey. I started to mix. I was already a black belt in karate, Kyokushin karate. So I decided to go to New York, learn Jiu-Jitsu. Start training with the Canadian Olympic wrestling team. Start boxing to mix it up. And the idea behind it was that in the fight game, for sure, you can spend a lifetime to specialize a certain set of skill to become good at something. But in mixed martial art, there's too many things that are important. So I'd rather be competent in every area of the fight game than be only specialized at one thing and be shitty at all the other things. Sure. Because that way, I can mold myself to become the perfect nemesis to my opponent. Right. I know if he's a wrestler, I'm gonna strike him. I know if he's a striker, I'm gonna wrestle him, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's more complicated than this, but that's the idea behind it.
Yeah, and everyone's very mixed now, but I think we almost saw that a little bit with Masvidal and Covington recently, where Masvidal's a brilliant striker, obviously, great fighter, and Covington's a world-class wrestler and a heel. He talks a lot of trash.
Yes.
but yeah, it's
he play good mind games, and the reason why people play mind games in the fight game, it's sometimes it will make your opponent derail of his game plan.
Right.
If I think of an example of this where someone can identify to it is the famous fight between Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard.
The Moss fight, yeah.
Yes, but the one before.
Oh.
The one before. So Sugar Ray Leonard, skill-wise, is much better than Roberto Duran.
Right.
Like, for my opinion is that he's a much better boxer.
Right.
But when he fought Roberto Duran in Montreal, Duran played a mind game, was trash talking a lot. Sugar Ray Leonard was even insulting his girlfriend.
During the fight? Or
no, before the fight.
Before, yeah.
So Leonard got so upset that he wanted to show him that he's a man, and because he was saying, "Oh, you're gonna run away again, like a coward." You know what I mean?
He sucked him going toe to toe
in front of his girlfriend. So
yeah,
it influenced greatly the way Leonard fought him that night. So Leonard planted his feet and did what he should not have done.
Right.
Tried to stand up to show Duran that he's a man, to show the whole world that he's a man.
You can do it this way too.
Yes, yeah. But he lost that fight.
But
if you see the next fight after, when he fought him, the famous Nomas, now you see him fighting at the best of his ability, because he came back to what makes him great, footwork and angle movement. So sometimes in the fight games, these are used as tactics. If you look at Conor McGregor when he had his first title shot against Jose Aldo, same thing. He trash talks Jose Aldo so much that Aldo got so angry that wanted to finish him early on in the fight. So what he did, he propelled himself forward, tried to hit him with a big shot. Conor McGregor is a master of counter-punching.
Very accurate striker.
Yes,
too,
let the big shot pass, miss, and then boom, knock him out. Thank you, have a good night. And that was the end of it. Right. So very often, trash talking in fight game, it's a way to drag your opponent into a certain state of mind,
it's never to obviously the same level or anything what you did, but in the business world, you do get folks really trying to poke him. And I have a competitor now. He loves calling my top employees and trying to lure them away and offer jobs. Now, so how do you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with that type of kind of mental warfare?
Yeah, of course. It's for me. I when I'm getting ready for a fight, the way I prepare myself mentally is I do a lot of visualization. You know, I imagery. And sometimes I see myself winning, and sometimes I don't see myself winning.
Really?
However, yeah, it's normal. You have sometimes, that's what, because it's part of our DNA, you know, to be able to identify the threat. I know when I have a fight, it's not going to be a walk in the park.
Sure.
And I know that I might get hit sometime and drop on my butt, and what I'm going to do if that happens. So that plays in my mind as well. So sometimes when I can drive my car, and if I'm month away before a fight or weeks away before a fight, there's a certain image sometimes that pops up in my mind. And it's not always positive. Sometimes it could be negative.
Right.
However, if it's a negative image, I never let it go and end on a negative note.
Right.
I always force myself to whatever I'm doing. You know, of course, if you're driving your car, it's a dangerous thing to do. But
Right.
if that pops up in your mind and it's a negative image, you never let it end on a negative note. You always think, okay, if that happened, how I'm gonna turn this situation to my advantage and take the upper hand. And then once you have done this, now you can go back to what you do. It's normal, but when you get ready for a fight, you try to focus on things, only the things that you have the control.
Right.
Win or lose, you do not control that.
Right.
What the people gonna think about you, you do not control that. Your opponent, what is he gonna do? You do not control that.
Right.
You control on how well prepared you can be, what you gonna do. These are the things that you can't control, and it's very important.
Yeah, you touched on a couple. Oh, go ahead.
You focus on the objective.
Right.
You know what you need. You know what needs to be done in order for you to win. There is no certainty in the game, but you can influence the odds. You can slope the odds into your advantage. Sure. So for me, before a fight, I know what I need to do to become the perfect nemesis to my opponent. I know what needs to be done. Every opponent are different. Of course, I have a different game plan, but I am focusing on the objective. Me, myself, as an entity, how I feel, that does not exist. I only focus on the things that need to be done, and it need to be done at all costs, even if I have to pay with my life with it, you know what I mean? And I'm going with that state of mind. And by doing so, I slope the odds on my side.
You know, you just touched on like two aspects of elite performance I don't think are talked about enough, especially in the business world, right? And the first one was actually that mental imagery and role playing. Do you know like 40% of the startups that fail are because there's not a good product market fit? Why? Because an entrepreneur had an idea, they thought it was a great idea, and what did they not do? They didn't close their mind or close their eyes and think through the entire, how am I going to get this product to market? What moves will I make when my competitors? They don't think ahead, but this is actually a trait, the best athletes, the best special operations guys in the world, it's planning, and roll. So that's why it was really fascinating to hear, you know, in your game that you actually mentally see yourself in a compromised situation sometimes, but then you get to work through getting out of that. You know, I have 3 boys, right? And they're ski racers. Now they're kids, right? So they're learning. But one of the things you watch all the time at the pro level is it kind of looks funny, but you see the skiers actually skiing the course with their eyes closed up top. You see them moving their hands all around. And I think it's actually something in the business world that would be incredibly important for entrepreneurs to put themselves in their shoes. The other thing you touched on is focus on what you can control. Because you know, a lot of elite performers or folks that want to be will over worry every little detail, I think. And I think it's some of the best advice. You know, I try to put it in business terms. Maybe I'm not doing a good job of it, but it's, you know, it kind of leads into kind of the next topic I want to talk to. It's like, how do you deal with failure?
You can't spend energy focusing on things that you do not control, because that energy that you just waste could have been used for something, you know, better. You know what I mean? Something that will help you. So yeah, I mean, failure, it's part of the game. I think it's always better to learn from other people's mistakes you know. So it's the best way to learn is from other people's mistakes.
We're not very good in the human race with history, are we? I think
Yeah,
we're watching history repeat itself over in Europe.
The thing is, I think there's some lesson that can be taught, but some need to be learned by yourself. You know what I mean? And I've learned some of these lessons the hard ways. You know what I mean? Sometimes I've learned a lot from watching other people's mistake, you know, so I know that I cannot make the same mistake that they just did, because it proved me that it doesn't work. The way they did doesn't work. But sometimes you have to live it, you know, and that's painful.
Not being afraid to fail.
Not afraid to fail. I mean, it's scary. You don't want to fail, you know. It's for me, it's, you know, it's hard. It's an ego thing. Right. But every time I fail, you confront to two choices. And when I fell, I need, you know, it's either you give up and you choose to do something else, or you identify the reasons why you fail. You know what I mean? And it's important that you do, and you make sure that you do not repeat those same mistake again. And if you do so, it doesn't mean you're not gonna fail again. It just means that you're not gonna fail again for the same mistake. Right. So you get better. You know, you have to see life or your career as a marathon, not as a sprint. You know?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I actually, you know, I have a dear friend, and he's really into martial arts, and he's a former or ex-Force Recon Marine, right? So that's kind of Marine Special Operations Unit. He's also a PhD in history. I think that's one thing we talk about all the time is I almost think it would be really good for a lot more focus on history and bring it, you know, you learn it in school and then everyone forgets it. You know, you look at what's going on in Europe right now, you look at, you know, challenges in our political system. I almost think it would be great to have almost like the History Channel, but more mainstream, where people, unfortunately, a lot of people don't get bored by it, but it's...
If you learn from the past, it makes you, I think it helps you understand the present. And sometimes, because life is a cycle, it could also sometimes help you predict the future.
Right, yeah, there's no question. So, you know, kind of last year, before we go into some more kind of human performance questions, I have some from our military friends, but you strike me as one of the most disciplined humans that, you know, I've seen in sports. And it seems like everyone that has reached kind of that GOAT status seems to kind of have that. So, well, at least in one part, right? I think we've seen some other athletes very disciplined in one area, but not the other. What do you think about that? Do you think it's overrated? Do you think, how do you get yourself to, you know, essentially go through the grind day in, day out and keep loving it?
Well, I don't live like a monk. Right. I mean, when you say discipline, I mean, it's not that every day of my life I watch what I eat and no, I'm not like that. I drink, I like to have a drink with my friend, to enjoy life, you know what I mean? To party, I've done plenty of, you know what I mean? I enjoy life, you know, and I think that's why I like what I did for a living, you know, because it's not because of the fighting, it's because it gives me some kind of freedom, you know, like in terms of freedom I'm my own boss in terms of my own schedule, you know what I mean? I made a lot of money, you know, it gives me access to things that most people don't have. That's why I did it, you know, to enjoy it. I didn't do it because I like to fight. I never enjoyed it. I like to live, you know, and the fact that I did this for a living allowed me to have a better quality of life, you know, to be able to have more fun. That's why I did it. But discipline is very important, you know, when I think the discipline comes when it's time to go to work. You know, when to tell yourself, okay, now that's enough. Now it's time to put my head into what I want to do. You know, there's a time to enjoy life, but there's a time also that you need to be disciplined to start working. And I think that's where the word discipline comes from, you know.
You know, you mentioned something to me, obviously, before we started filming this that kind of struck me, especially from the business world, and it was, you told me you didn't like fighting, right? The actual, you know, kind of come game day. And I think I talked to a lot of folks, I hate my job, you know, or I don't like it. And I've heard a lot of advice is you should always do your passion. But, you know, what's kind of interesting is when I ask that mindset question, I think a lot of the mindset is like, what are you looking to get out of whatever you're stepping into, you know? And for me, I work for freedom. Maybe some of the similar reasons. Do I love computers and cybersecurity? Yes. Did I love my intelligence career prior? I absolutely loved it. I would go back, but I think maybe that is a good mental tool for folks when they're in a grind, maybe they don't 100% love it, is to look at what they can do because of it, you know?
Personally, for me, I had the best and the worst job in the world.
Right.
Best job in the world because I'm free.
Right.
I have no boss. I can go and I can leave the country or go anywhere whenever I want.
Right.
I have the freedom. I made a lot of money with it because I was successful. Of course, it gave me access to things that other people does not have. I use fighting as a benchmark to propel me where I wanted to be in life. Right. But I never liked fighting. The worst part of it is I never liked it. I like the training. I like the science of it. I like to be fit, and this job allowed me to be fit. I like the confidence that it gives me to walk in a room or be like, man, if I know if something goes wrong, I can take care of it. Yes, yeah. But in order to have those privilege,
right,
I need to step in the octagon and fight. It's the worst day of my life. And at the time, I remember I sought the help of sport psychologists because I was looking around with my training partners, and most of them, they were like, yeah, they enjoyed fighting. And I was like, man, these guys are psychopaths. I'm not in the right field of work. And when I talked to a sport psychologist, he said, George, stop saying you're afraid. You're not afraid, you're excited. I'm like, this does not really, I don't know if it's my English, but does not really apply here. I'm excited if it's minus 20 degrees in Montreal and I know next week I'm going on vacation on the beach. I'm not excited.
Go to Florida or something?
Yeah, I'm not excited to go fight in the octagon, not knowing if I'm going to be brutally injured or humiliated or winning the title. I'm afraid. And then I realized, you know what? I shouldn't be afraid to admit that I'm afraid because there is no courage without fear. And everything you do in life, everything you do that is important for you, you will be afraid because you don't want to fail. It's important for you. That means you care. Right. And you need courage in order to keep persevere and go through that fear in order to do what you need to do in order to succeed. And that's where a lot of people fail. Sometimes they under the stress, they can't pull the trigger. They're good in the gym, they're good in practice, but when it's time to perform, to go on stage for a conference or whatever it is, they can't perform. They can't perform. They because they're perhaps not well prepared enough. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's where I think it comes from.
Yeah, I had a coach in college, and the very first day I showed up, his first comment to me was, "Get comfortable being uncomfortable." And it's actually something I've taken with me for the rest of my life. And I wonder if the act of going through that kind of mentally and physically uncomfortable actually prepares you. Kind of like you talked about earlier, where bullying kind of mentally hardened you to trash talk, because you fought some guys that could talk. I mean, the Diaz bro, Nick specifically.
They were bad. They're all bad.
He's probably talking trash while you're fighting.
Yeah, it was. I got a lot of guys I thought they were trying to trash talking me, but I believe they did so because they want me to derail from my game plan.
Of course they did.
They want
it's
me
a
to
tool
stand
of warfare.
With that. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, listen, in the intelligence world, military, disinformation, weaponizing information. I mean, that I would say, and Jose Aldo is an absolutely brilliant fighter. Love watching the guy, but it did really feel like Conor McGregor brought what we'd call IO 100%. Into the game, and I think it worked. I mean, obviously, I think we saw that, right?
Jose Aldo never been he's a guy that dismantled his opponent by a volume, like leg kick, punch, bing. Right. He break them mentally, He's a very powerful striker, but with volume. Right. But when he fought Jose Aldo, he wanted to finish him with one shot. He leaped himself into McGregor, and McGregor just let the big punch go and counter him.
It's probably one of the
big mistake.
The bad style matchup to operate that way when you have a devastatingly accurate counterpuncher. Kind of switch gears a little bit. So obviously, our previous life before kind of being in the cyber world was out of the intelligence services, and so we have a lot of good military and special operations friends. And I think one great thing that's going on is our military, for the longest time, it was the only way to kind of mentally break someone or see how they'll perform is to create lots of physical stress. And unfortunately, that has also resulted in a lot of really physically broken warriors, from overtraining, overuse, running, and old school military boots are really bad. You get a lot of stress fractures. And so they sent me a bunch of questions before this one, because obviously they got really excited when they knew you were going to be here. So the first question's an interesting one, and I think I know the answer to this. They have a lot of different jobs they have to master, right? Everything from weapons, communications, how to leverage intelligence, all the different platforms they can bring to bear. Yet it's also an extremely physically demanding job. And so the one question is, when you have limited time, should you focus on a few skills and master them, or broad breadth? And this is specifically like combat skills, kind of like your hand-to-hand combat, What's your thought on that? I know it's a tough one to probably answer, but.
No, I think the most important thing when you're going to combat is to identify certain patterns that are very likely to happen during the fight. Like certain situation that like statistically speaking, will certainly going to happen. Because you know your style and you know your opponent's style. You have to know your opponent and know yourself. Knowing yourself sometimes it's hard too, so you could seek the help of other people for that. When you identify those certain situations, you need to make sure that you master the skills that are required to have an edge if those situations
in the most
happen.
likely scenario.
Yes.
Okay.
If let's say so you need to focus on specific things that you need that will open. I think you will have a better return on your investment by doing that. It's skill work, skills work, efficiency. You will have a better return on your investment that if you do that than if you focus on strength conditioning, so to speak. You know what I mean? I think so. In terms of combat perspective, you know what I mean?
It's wild what you said for combat, and then this is kind of nerdy, of course, but in our cyber defense world, we always talk about, and military world, operating with the information asymmetry advantage, which really you need to understand this virtual environment you're protecting, and exactly what you said, the most likely courses of action you're going to run into, and then become amazing at detecting and nullifying those. And to be honest, it's something that it's brought us a ton of success, because I think some folks like to focus on the really technically difficult challenges, these esoteric things that are in theory possible and it has happened, but it's not the common in every breach you sort of deal with. But it sounds that way. That's really, really great advice.
It could vary depending who you're going up against, and depending of the situation. For instance, I had certain guys that I was fighting in my career that I knew they were guys that were very, very good at bringing their opponent, their backs against the fence.
Okay.
So I knew it would likely to happen if I would fight them. So I made sure that if that happened, like a big part of my training was focusing on that particular situation.
How to get out of that,
yes,
or avoid getting in it in the first place.
Yeah. When I was getting ready for fighting that guy, I was mainly focusing on this. But outside of that, when I was not in training camp for that particular guy, I'm focusing on general skills to get better overall as a fighter, But when the fight is getting closer, now I start to pinpoint which situation are more likely to happen, and it become more specialized. What I mean?
It's great advice for any entrepreneur or business owner is to focus on how to win the most likely competition scenario you come up with.
You identify who's your competitor and what is the thing that you do better than your competitor. Right. And those things you need to make sure that you exploit it. Right. Don't try to compete against your competitor where they have the edge. Sure. Avoid the fight where they're strong and bring the fight where they are the weakest. Take them out of their comfort zone, and that's the key of the art of war.
That's why we named the podcast "The Unfair Fight." You never want to fight a fair fight, and you definitely. That's to your point. You want to fight people where they're weakest, not where they're strongest.
It's not the best in sport or in business. I believe, like in fighting, same thing. It's not the best team that wins the game. Right. Otherwise, that would be boring. We would know always ahead of time who would win the game. It's the team that play the best the night of the game. Same thing in fighting.
Right.
It's not the best fighter that wins the fight all the time.
You're right.
Sometimes it is, but it's the fighter. It's always the fighter that fight the best the night of the fight.
When it matters.
There's so many things that can influence the performance of you know what I mean? So we do not control that, you know what I mean? So it's important that when you prepare yourself for something, you need to identify those cues.
You know, we have a saying in the business world, the best product only wins 50% of the time.
100%. Right. I've seen a lot of shitty product that in the fitness world is a big gimmick.
Oh, there's
a
so
lot of shitty product, but they're very successful.
Shitty supplements.
I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. It's because they know how to exploit that idea. You know, they know how to make themselves look good. You know what I mean? Because they promote what they're strong, what they're good at, but they don't talk about where they're weak.
It's the go-to-market, the messaging. You know, I think it's pretty wild when you think about professional sports, and especially yours in professional fighting, how similar the lessons learned are to successful businesses. That's why I wanted to have you on this podcast. It was fascinating to talk about.
There's a lot of fighters that are very well known, very popular, but they're not the best fighters.
Right.
But business-wise, they're the one that makes the most money because they know how to promote themselves.
Yeah, they really do. There's no question.
There's a lot of great fighters. They're not very, in terms of money and business, they're not very successful. Right. But they're a great fighter. They're the best fighters, but they're not very good.
Well, professional sports, music, it's the entertainment business at the end of the day, and it's the medium you're playing in happens to be fighting. So I think that's a really great business lesson, is to really focus on that kind of go-to-market, how you get your messaging done, and don't let perfect sometimes be the enemy of good enough, and I think that's where you see a difference in some businesses. So kind of switching gears back to some questions from the military community. How did you go about, you train different than a lot of folks, especially a lot of folks in the US, when you were coming up. What was your approach to minimizing injuries? This is a big issue, especially in the special operations world, and I think they'd just love to hear from you.
I did a lot of mistake before I lift heavy weight, and my pride when I was training in the gym with some of my training partner, it was some kind of a pride thing, to lift heavy, but I think it hurts me more than it did goods, I think it was a mistake, and now I do not lift heavy anymore. You know what I mean? I do lift. Sometimes I do some clean and jerk, but I do a lot of stuff when I have to push with maximum intensity. I make sure that I do something that's not gonna hurt me. For example, I will use a sled.
Oh yeah.
I will push as hard as I can on the sled, but I know it's not like a squat, because if I cannot lift it, it's gonna collapse on me and break my spine, sort of.
Ruptured discs, everything you get from that.
Yeah, so I make sure that when I do something in terms of strength conditioning training, I do it with in a way that I make sure that I cannot get injured. So the sled will not push back. I will push the sled, but the sled will not push back. So I love sled. I love also track and field. I love swimming. I think, and that's just my theory, I think sometimes we need to stop and look back at our ancestor, our hunter-gatherer ancestor, when technology did not really exist. What made us great as a species? What is the thing that hunter-gatherer do? They run, they swim, they fight, they throw. High-end ball coordination. Tennis, basketball, whatever it is, we are excellent thrower.
Right.
If we couldn't throw, there's no way we'd be ahead of on top of the food chain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we cannot kill an animal that is so much more powerful than us if we cannot throw.
Right.
So we use throwing. So I think the most healthy thing for us, I think, is to go back to what nature gave us without the technology. Like running, swimming, gymnastics, some kind of gymnastic. Climbing tree. Throwing, if you play basketball, baseball, tennis, high ball and eye coordination. I think in terms of exercise, side exercise from what you mainly do, it would be more beneficial than than lifting weight.
Yeah, I know we talked about this kind of prior to filming, and I played sports, but not nearly at your level, just in college. And when you think about it, you put it in a kind of in a really elegant way, which is lucky. Could you think of a time, ancestors, hunt and gatherer, where they're just doing this with stones all day long? No, they don't do that stuff.
They don't do that. It was useless.
And that's all we did, and it's caused a lot of injuries that aren't going away for a long time for me personally. And so I think that's really, really good advice, because I think sometimes whether you played high school sports, and there's so much bad like strength and conditioning advice, and especially at the high school level, I think when folks get into a really intense environment, the first kind of, at least in the West here in the United States specifically, you just think about throwing heavy weights, and then that becomes competition in the gym, and no one wants to, kind of lose in the weightlifting game, but it doesn't necessarily make your performance better. So maybe one of your best pieces of advice on avoiding injuries is a diversity of activity and flexibility.
I think it's more therapeutic. Yeah. I think lifting weight will not make you a better athlete in your own sport. It's a question of, it's therapeutic. It will, maybe because you play tennis, you always swing a certain way. Sure. So if you do that all day long, at one point you'll be off balance.
Yeah.
So the fact that you do something else that help you therapeutically to create a certain balance in your body, I think that's why it's used. For me, before. I changed my mind a lot through my experience with this. I used to think that, if I bench press heavier, I will punch harder, but I think it's completely absurd.
I think it's backwards.
I think it's the worst, yeah. You will get hurt by doing it. So I think the sport that you do, strength conditioning, or the sport that you choose to do to keep you in shape or to help you perform, that is a side sport, should be something that you benefit, that is therapeutic. So for me, it's gymnastic, track and field, swimming. I like to play basketball.
Is that your favorite sport besides?
Basketball, soccer. I play. It's for ball and eye coordination.
Yeah.
I think
basketball is one of the most all-around best athletic activities you can do. Basketball players are amazing athletes.
I think it's good to do something. If you do a sport with a lot of impact, I think it's important that you take sometimes to play a sport that has no impact. Right. Everything has a certain level of impact, but I mean, if you play football or go play basketball, you know what I mean? Or I've seen a lot of best bodybuilders, I'm thinking about pumping iron, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was doing ballet, to help him to pose. It's completely the opposite, and I think it's good for the brain to be more well-rounded, to do something completely different. You go north, then you go completely south. Right. I think that helps you. If you only go, because I say that because I have a lot of training partners that only train MMA, that do strength conditioning, and the minute they go play basketball or tennis or any other sport, they get hurt. And they say, it's because I'm old. It's not because you're old. Right. Do you remember in the schoolyard when you were a kid, you were playing different sport and you didn't get hurt? Right. It's because you stopped doing it. You become so specialized at one particular type of movement that you forget everything else, and now the minute you try to step outside your comfort zone, you hurt yourself because you can't remember how to move efficiently. And I think that's the reason why. Yeah.
It's good business advice too, right? You need to really get smart in all the different domains and exercise your mind, because a lot of times it's all mental.
If you're, a lot of the most successful people I know in the business world, I remember I can't say name, I can't say many names, but a lot of them I've started from the bottom of the company. They have done all the jobs, so they know all the chain is working. So when they're on the top, they understand all the nuance of the company. So they know how, when they have a problem, they know how to identify the problem right away, because they know the whole thing. They know the whole chain of command. You know what I mean? I think it's important to be.
We say this in cybersecurity, which it's probably a weird analogy, but it needs to be more. What's going on right now in our world is where I want to get into cybersecurity. So you go to school, you get a huge bill, go to college, and you come out, and a lot of times you just know buttonology, and it needs to be more like a trade, like a plumber, where you start as an apprentice, right? And a journeyman, and finally get to a kind of a master. I think that kind of advice, both for kind of, training and not hurting yourself, you really got to move through that process. And so talk a little bit about recovery. I mean, I know I think there is, for folks that are highly motivated, I think sometimes, overtraining is a thing, and proper recovery is not prioritized as much as training. What are your thoughts on like cryotherapy, cold water stuff?
I think when we say overtraining, it's a word that we invented.
Okay.
I think you cannot necessarily always identify overtraining with by the quantity of training or the intensity of training that you have done, because there's other factors that we don't take in consideration. For example, are you sleeping enough? Are you under other stress that has nothing to do with training, but maybe your girlfriend give you problems, your family give you problems, someone is dead, or are you behind in your loan? You know what I mean? Like stress, you know what I mean? So when you say overtraining, sometimes it could be something that has nothing to do with the training that makes you be overtraining, because you cannot recuperate well enough. Yeah. So I think overtraining, we should change the word overtraining for being under rest. I think there's no way you can be overtraining. I mean, it is just being under rest. Of course, there's a certain point that if you train too much, you'll be overtrained. But I think very often, and in my case and the case that people I know, the reason why they are what we call overtrained is because they have other stress that comes from outside that makes it in a way that their head are not focused enough. They don't perform as well because they have emotional issues. So I think that's the problem here.
That's fascinating. I'm thinking about a ski racer, this woman named Michaela Schifrin. She's Olympian. Many believe she's kind of like you in your sport, like one of the greatest to ever do it. And I've heard a lot of interviews, and it seems like she's always talking about how much emphasis she places on sleeping and rest, actually, and it's like part of the program. And so that really makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like a rest deficit.
I think the emotions are very important. The emotion affect your state of mind. If you're emotionally, if you're balanced, you're happy. Sure. You're probably gonna sleep better. You know what I mean? If you're not happy because emotionally you're unstable, maybe you have stuff in your mind that goes on and prevent you from sleeping, or prevent you for really focusing, or prevent you for being 100% in terms of performance with your nervous system. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think it's very important. So when you talk about recuperation, I think sleeping is the most important thing, 100%. Right. Like you cannot bypass sleeping. I think sleeping is. I listened to Matthew Walker. I read his book, and he made a good analogy. He compared the brain with a sponge, and he says when you sleep well, your brain is like a dry sponge. It can soak all the water. Right. But if your brain doesn't sleep in, it's like the water has not dry. It's your sponge is still wet, so it doesn't soak as much water. And this is how you absorb the knowledge. But there's also another thing that we don't talk about is how you absorb it, how you process the knowledge. So first you need to absorb it, and then you need to process it, and you need sleeping for that. If you don't sleep, you're gonna fall always behind. It is very important. But for me, when you talk about recuperation, it has a big part of it is how can I increase the quality of my sleep. For me, it's the most important thing.
I'll tell you, that's one area, in my old life, sleep deprivation was like a thing. Do a lot of 25, 30-hour operations with no sleep, and I hate the process that you go through. But have you ever noticed in training that you could train, 2 weeks straight on a skill, and you almost you get better for sure, but then you walk away for like 4 days, come back, and it's almost like your mind was able to put to work all that training you did, and you're almost better when you come back. Have you ever noticed this? I noticed this. I drive a sim to practice race car driving because I do that for fun.
100%.
And I notice if I spend too much time and I don't walk away, give it a break, I'm almost getting like stagnant, and then I walk away for a few days, like first lap faster.
100%. We do drilling. We do drilling in fighting, a lot of drills, repetition. Yeah, physically, when we drill, we get better.
Sure.
Let's say we learn a new move. I'll get better at the end of the practice, better than I was at the beginning of the practice, but I don't really do get better. You know, yeah, I do get better because I've learned a move and repeatedly I've done it. But I really will get better after I sleep. When I had a good night of sleep, now my brain processed the whole information, and the next time I'm stepping into the training, now I'm going to be really better. Right. So you need to be able to recuperate in order to process the information. So, and that's when you get better. It's when you sleep. So recuperation for me, big part of it should be focus on increasing the quality of your sleep. And for that, I'm using a lot of different things, you know, to control my emotion that I use therapeutically, also physically to control the inflammation on my body. I like to use fasting and cold water therapy in order to do that. And I use fasting and cold water therapy for therapeutic use, for mental, to be in a better state of mind. Really? And the reason why and how it works for me is, you know, in life sometimes we have different kinds of stress that are kind of insignificant, but I'm the kind of person that even if everything goes well in my life, I'll be stressed about something. There's always something that's stressing.
Of course, yeah.
Always. Like the other day, I just bought a condo in Sunny Isles, and I was stressed. Right. And I was talking to a friend of mine. He's like, "What's going on, George? You seem so stressed." I'm like, "Damn." I was like, my furniture has not arrived yet. I don't know what's going on. It's stressed me out. He's like, "George," he's like, "You used to be stressed because someone want to rip your head off, you know? Now you're stressed because your furniture has not arrived. That means your life is going very well." And I paused for a second. I was like, "It's true." So the reason why I'm doing ice bath and fasting is I do prolonged fasting, for example, 4 times a year.
How long do you go?
I do 3 to 5 days.
Okay.
I do water fast, and the last day, very often, I do a dry fast. Okay. It's very, very hard. I don't recommend to nobody. You need to make sure you ask your doctor first. Yeah, you do that
of course.
To see if you have a condition, but I do it, and it really helped me to detox myself, to fight off the inflammation, but also therapeutically, because sometimes I have those stupid and insignificant things that stress me in my life. But when I'm fasting, now all those insignificant things are going out because it's not important. So my body, it's like my brain really focus on the fact that, man, I'm starving and I'm gonna fucking die if I don't eat soon. You know what I mean? So it's not the fasting itself that is therapeutic for me. It's when when I break my fast and I eat my first calorie.
Best food you've had ever.
I taste it and I'm like, wow, man, it's so good. I'm so lucky. It makes me appreciate it so much. And all those insignificant things that I was focusing on, like before I start my fast, it's so stupid. It makes me realize how so stupid it is. So it put me back in the right state of mind. It makes me realize how lucky I am, and just to be alive and to be able to eat. And the same thing when I go in the ice bath. Right. I go in the ice bath, not every day, but I like to do it in the morning. Right. I wake up in the morning, I go in an ice bath. It put me in a very uncomfortable situation. And all this insignificant problem, when I'm in the water, I'm not thinking about none of them. I'm like, shit, I'm gonna die. I have hypothermia right now if I don't get out. And then it's not like someone forced me to do it. I do it voluntarily. but it's very hard, and I hold it until it becomes very uncomfortable, and I try to find comfort in this very uncomfortable situation. And when I step out of the water, I still don't think about those insignificant problems, and I'm like, man, it feels so good to be alive, to not be in this freaking like in this freaking dead life-threatening situation. like it makes me feel so good to be alive.
A balance there.
And for me, that's how I use it to control my emotion. So when you talk about performance, for me, emotions has a big part to do with it. And that's how I use my lifestyle to make me happy sometimes. Like when we all have problems in our life. We all have stress and that are very often
just different
insignificant.
Yeah.
Insignificant. It's not life-threatening. So I like to put myself in a life-threatening situation. I force myself to be in a life-threatening situation to make me realize how insignificant my problems are.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Makes total sense.
Because in life, if you always eat 3 meals a day, you're gonna look at someone who will eat 1 meal a day, and you might think like, man, he must be miserable. But maybe that guy is more happy than you. Or maybe if you're a wealthy guy, you always have what you want. You look down to someone who live in a poor country, and you look at a kid growing up or someone else, man, he must be miserable. But this guy is more happy than you. So it's all about balance. So I like sometimes to use that to put me in a life-threatening situation, either because I'm fighting starvation or I'm fighing hypothermia, to make me remember how lucky I am.
That's
I don't know
incredible.
if it makes sense.
It makes total sense. I've always hated cold water. I never loved the cold baths, but
it's not. I don't like it either. But
I know one of my employees swears by a cold shower almost every day to start it because it's uncomfortable, and he says it starts his day so much better. I would say for me, I tell my wife sometimes, like, fly fishing is the one thing that like I'll do. I'm not thinking about anything else. This is like race car driving. When I'm in the race car, I'm not thinking about anything. So it's just literally a way to get your mind focused on one thing. And the way you use it is really great advice, because I think it's really too easy to get a little too comfy. And that can definitely be a performance hindrance.
You start, when you're too comfy, you start not realizing how lucky you are, because you forgot sometimes where you come from, or you forget where you can end up be going. You know what I mean? And of course, there's there's physical reason why I'm doing this. The fasting and the cold water therapy. I think it helps me boost my immune system. I personally believe it helps me fight off inflammation, which help me recuperate faster, and it helps me sleep. Not when I do it, but when I'm starting to eat again, it feels great. It feels like I feel
What's
like
the worst period in the fasting? What do you have to like break through? Like, is there like a zone where it's like I just got to fight through this, and then it normalizes?
It's like anything else. You can build up a certain resistance to it. The more you do, the easier it becomes. And for me, in the beginning, it was harder than it is now. Now it's a joke. I do 3 days. It's
no problem.
It's a walk in the park. Yeah, it's no problem. I mean, it's uncomfortable. It's not fun, but it's a feeling of discomfort that I'm used to deal with. And now what I do is when I do 3 days, for example, my first 48 hour, I do a water fast, but my last 24 hour, I do a dry fast. The dry fast, it estimates that a dry fast a day of dry fast equals 3 days. So basically, it would be like 5 days.
Yeah, it's wild about that. I personally suffer for some digestive issues. I've never really thought of it this way, but when I go long periods of time without eating, I actually feel better.
It helps me a lot. I have a condition called ulcer colitis.
Oh, you do? That's a rough one.
It helps me get rid of all my symptoms.
Really?
Yeah, I'm medication free now.
Back to your previous or earlier, you mentioned kind of living a little bit more, taking those lessons learned from hunter-gatherer. I don't think we were finding food every single time. You know what I mean?
I think we are an opportunistic species. We eat when we can eat, until we eat as much as we can, and because we don't know when it's going to be the next time. We try to live through an ice age. We know that hunter-gatherer Homo sapien have went through 2 ice age. You know, it's crazy. The last one finished like 11,600 years ago. You know what I mean? It's the end of the Pleistocene era. It's like, think about it. We complain about stuff that
we complain about so much stuff that really doesn't
we're getting
matter.
so soft nowadays.
I couldn't agree more.
So I like to do this to reminds me what we're capable of doing.
It's fantastic advice. Fantastic. So, kind of switching gears. You've retired from fighting, obviously, which you seem to have a lot going on. Talk to me about what are you doing now? It's kind of like you're now entering a lot more of the. Well, you were in a business before. Let's not kind of call it just fighting. You're in the entertainment game and the fight game. Like, what are you doing now? What's your passion? Do you have any kind of new business initiatives going on?
Yeah, it's been 4 years now. I'm working on acting game. So I'm having acting lessons every week, and I had a few opportunity recently. I did for Disney the Falcon and the Winter Soldiers series. Incredible. I did Captain America, Winter Soldier. So I portray a character. His name is George Batroc. He's a mercenary. He's part of the Marvel universe. Sure. But I just came back from England. I played a hitman in a movie that will come out.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun doing this. But I think that acting is very similar to fighting. Because I believe that I was acting all my career. Before every fight, I was extremely uncomfortable, terrified. But if you see me walking through the octagon, I was putting on an act, making me look like I was excited to be there, you know, and I couldn't wait to get into the cage. Right. But in reality, that was all the opposite. I was putting on a mask, like we say in the sport world, you fake it until you make it.
Until you make it, yeah. Well, that's in business world too, man. Yes. I think, what's wild about that? Kind of, I would say in my previous life, maybe sometimes like, we have Hollywood folks commenting on some national security issue, and I was like, these freaking guys, they make believe for a living. What do they know? But then, I think as I grew up a little bit and I started thinking, my gosh, first off, that is a hard job to be able to deliver on command, on cue, especially the bigger the production, the more people are waiting on you. And the second thing I never realized, it wasn't until later in my intelligence career when, a lot of times in my old life, you're following people and surveilling them when they think no one's around. You learn a lot about humans that way. And one of the things that always struck me was how powerful of an export our entertainment business is. Right? It puts the United States, the West, many times on this almost unrealistic pedestal. But I have more respect for acting and the movie making business. It's unbelievably technical. What they do is incredibly, incredibly hard. It's super impressive you've been able to do that.
It's a skill. I think it's a skill like anything else. I believe the best actor in the world are, maybe they have certain predisposition that make them better. Right. I think it's like sport. If you're born with an handicap, of course your chance of being an elite athlete are very low. But you need to be athletic. If you have good material that you can work with, it's already an edge. But also you need to work hard. You need to make a commitment at the beginning. If you want something, you need to. If there is no commitment, you'll never start. And if there is no consistency after that, you'll never finish. You know what I mean? You need a good, strong commitment and discipline and consistency at the end of it to be able to reach your goal.
Now, I think you have another initiative as well. I believe it's Heart and Soil, correct?
Heart and Soil.
Talk to me about this. I'm kind of fascinated.
I have a new line of food supplement called Warrior. Okay. It's heart and liver. It's actually food. We say it's supplement, but it's actually food. It's heart and liver that has been desiccated in a process called dry freeze in order to preserve most of the nutrients.
The nutrients, right?
Probably
a lot of minerals in there too, huh?
Yeah. And if you look at a predatory animal, like if you look, for example, an orca when it kills a great white, it goes for the liver, leave the rest. So, and even when I went to Africa, I visited the Maasai. It's a tribe that are 99.9% carnivorous. Really? They are beautiful people, man. And I I asked them, it's like when they eat an animal, they go for the organs all the time. And every predatory animal, like the alpha in a wolf pack, when an animal is killed, goes for the liver. You know what I mean? The liver and the heart. So that's what I have in my supplement. Heart and liver. We call it Warrior. So it's a supplement that is available for everybody.
Very good.
I don't always eat well.
Right.
I travel a lot. I'm very often on the road, and
eat well.
and of course I'm not very disciplined all the time in terms of eating. I like to eat past. I enjoy my life. You know, I like to have a drink sometimes, but at least I make sure that I can optimize my nutrition with this.
Oh,
so
that's
I
incredible.
take it with me all the time. Yeah.
Well done. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's really true. I mean, if it's good enough for the animal kingdom, I guarantee it's good enough for us.
Yeah,
Right?
100%. Hunter-gatherers, that's what they go for, 100%. I went to Africa a few times, and that's what they go for.
Fasting, that definitely happened back then. Cold water, I'm sure there's times when they had to get in cold water.
I'm under the impression, and that's only me, because I know now we have nice clothes, you know.
Yeah,
but
I know,
I'm
right?
sure our hunter-gatherer ancestor developed a certain resistance to cold. If you used to live in 12,000 years ago when you were in North America, I'm sure, or Ice Age Europe, I'm sure you were not, you had some fur on you, but it was not well designed as much as we have stuff that we have today. So you develop, of course, a certain resistance to cold.
There's no question. I'm from Buffalo originally, right? So cold like up here in Montreal, but I live in Maryland a little bit where it's hot, and then Val, Colorado, just for my kids, ski racing. And there is no question. My middle kid, I'm convinced he doesn't even feel cold. Like their tolerance goes up. They're 5 days a week, and sometimes it's -12, -15 Fahrenheit. It is cold, but they can handle it.
Your body, I think, can adapt to everything. There are stress that I think that it can be beneficial for you. You put yourself through a certain stress that it can be beneficial. It makes you stronger. But there are stress also that are bad. That can put you on fighter's flight, like all the time. Like
cortisol just dumping, huh?
Yes, exactly. Like you're watching the news, it's bad because it makes you stress about the war, stress about the COVID, stress about this. And this, I don't think is good stress, because in a way, at long terms, maybe it can produce some cancer, or it just affect you mentally.
Yeah, there's no question. Obviously,
my parent is sad. I had a condo I just bought a condo in Florida, and I want them to come.
Congrats.
To see the condo, and they're still stressed. Oh, we're gonna wait that everything goes down now before. I'm like, what? You gonna wait that you passed away, to come? It's like, come now. It's like, it's fine, They're like, we're gonna wait a little bit. I'm like, my parents are very healthy, you know what I mean? But mentally, they are really affected. They are on fighter's flight, because they are stressed about what they heard in the media. Of course, you need to take that in consideration, but you can't stop living your life because of it.
There's no question.
Yeah.
There's no question. It's fantastic advice. Kind of like last year, you seem like you're one of the folks that has an amazing moral compass. You like to give back. Talk to me about some charitable work. I know you've been doing some good stuff, and we'd love to participate in it.
Yeah, I have a foundation, St-Pierre Foundation. I give money to a lot of, I sponsor a lot of athletes that are not necessarily Olympic athletes, but that are hope to one day to become Olympic athlete. They are chosen by their result. In their discipline, and the discipline that I sponsor are all the fighting discipline that I've studied: wrestling, judo, karate, taekwondo, boxing, gymnastic, fencing. Wow. Fencing as well. Yeah. And I all these athletes that I sponsors every year, they are in the program. They train to become Olympic athlete, and it's very important that they are at school as well, because you cannot put all your eggs in the same basket. Yeah, I see a lot of parents sometimes coming with their kids, and they come to me and they're like, "Oh, George, my kid is the future world champion. Which advice do you have for him?" And I look down at the kid and I tell him, I say, "You know what? You at school? Yes. They stay at school. This is the most important thing for you." And the parent always look at me like this. It's like, I'm not going to tell your kid to put all his eggs in the same basket to try to become a professional fighter, to make it, because I did it. It's like the odds of being successful at this are extremely low.
You're the 1%.
And if you love your kids, you don't want them to choose
Right.
that path of life. I mean, you can't do this. I mean, it's like I've seen this movie many times. It's a bad ending. Like, and it's not only in fighting. And I'm talking about hockey, basketball, same thing.
Oh, the sport my kids are in. I'm telling you, people spend huge money.
It's terrible. And you put all your eggs in the same basket, and you focus only on your sport, and you let go your education. So what's gonna happen? Okay, maybe you're gonna have some kind of success, but let's say you're at the end of your 20s, or you reach 30, and you found out that, or you get hit by a car, an accident, or just simply that you're not good enough. You found out that you can't be recruited to be professional and to achieve your dream. And you have no education. You have nothing that you can fall back into.
And nothing to look forward to.
So what I tell the kids is that, train if you want. Try to become a fighter, but stay at school. This is your assurance, you know what I mean? And people don't know about me. They think, I didn't have the choice. I choose that. Right. You know, when I stopped school when I had my first title shot. And I had a talk with as I was at school the whole way through that. And I told my parents at that time, because school was a priority for me and for them, I told my parents when I had my first title shot against Matt Hughes, I told my parents, I said, I have a chance to achieve my dream. And I need to put myself full time now into this to maximize the odds. Is it okay if I let go this session at school? And if I fail, I will start back in 6 months, but I cannot, it's an opportunity of a lifetime. They said, you know what, we know how much you want this, go for it. I fell, I lost the fight against Matt Hughes, but luckily for me, I rebound back from other wins that give me another title shot down the line, and I made it through. But you know what I mean? Let's say I would not.
But you went in very conscious, right? Like with that decision, it's like I need to put all my energy into this for this short period of time because I have a chance to make a life out of this.
Life is not a straight line. You never know. You know, I consider that I was extremely lucky. Yeah, I had some predisposition. I was skilled. I met incredible mentor in my life that helped me be where I am. I don't know all the cause. I believe in the causality for me. I believe there is cause and effect. But my ignorance makes it in a way that I don't know all the cause that makes me become a successful fighter. And I was successful. I made enough that I can retire good for the rest of my life. If I don't act like stupid and start buying jewelry, boat and airplane and stuff like that. But you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I'm very comfortable.
Right.
But it's a very small percentage of people, and it makes me very sad because going to the gym sometimes it's a place that makes me very happy because I can practice the sport that I love. But at the end of the training, there's always a few guys that comes to me and they go, "Hey George, I would like to seek your advice about what I should do." And my real advice to them, a lot of them, I don't tell them the truth. You know, would be like, "Man, you're 33 years old. You're on a three fight losing streak. I think you should consider do something else for your living. You're not gonna make it." But if I tell them that, they're gonna be insulted.
Oh yeah.
They're gonna look at me like they're gonna look at me like I'm a prick. You know, like I'm a.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm looked down on him, and I don't look down on them because I want the best for him. You know, but that's a sad reality I have to face very often.
Probably a lot. You know, it's almost. You're the 1%, or you specifically, way less than 1%.
And I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
It could be only one thing, one person that, or one, maybe I miss an opportunity to meet someone, or I something affect me that I make a wrong judgment, and my whole career changes. You know, sometime in life you don't know. You know, I was very lucky that the stars were all aligned.
The way you bounced back from the Matt Hughes when he was like Superman then, right?
Yeah.
Back then, like your first fight with him, I mean, he was just dominating. I think BJ Penn was the only guy to kind of beat him.
Yeah, after.
And you know, kind of that last thing, and we'll kind of wrap it here, but 2 is 1, 1 is none is one of the best things I ever heard, and it's basically, you know, it's a mantra to live by where you always have a bit of a backup plan. That's probably one of the best pieces of advice, to a lot of folks.
I think it's important even in business. You have to have a backup plan, like a plan A, plan B. Like in a fight, when I go in a fight, I have a plan A. But what if I can take, for example, I can bring the guy to the floor, and when I cannot keep him on the floor, what do I do? Right. If you fail in your attempt of doing something, what are you gonna do? Right. You need to be able to answer this right now. You need to know this. You know what I mean?
It's fascinating.
Yes,
George. Wonderful advice. Thank you so much for taking the time with us here.
Thanks to you. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. And best of luck in the new business ventures, and best of luck on your life goal of trying to be a little bit better every day.
Try my best. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you for having me on the show. Yeah.
Of course.